Since Avengers Infinity War came out just last weekend, I figured now would be a good time to talk about the whole cinematic universe trend. You see, this movie is basically the reason why you would try to make a cinematic universe in the first place. It's a massive achievement that manages to juggle over 30 characters for more than 5 different interwoven franchises. Thought it'd be a fun exercise to dive in and examine why this universe works and why pretty much every other attempt at this has failed. So let's do that. So let's kick this off by talking about the Marvel Cinematic Universe and what makes it work. The first reason it works so well is Marvel laid the proper groundwork to support this massive series. To get all metaphorical, they built a foundation that could support their absurdly large mansion. Of all those who attempted to build a cinematic universe over the last decade, Marvel is like the only company to bother to do this. Patience is sort of key if you want to make something like this work. It took 5 films over the course of 4 years before Marvel released the Avengers. That's why it works so well. You remember when we thought this movie was super ambitious and risky? That's because for the time, it was. Marvel played the long game then, and it paid off, so they've kept playing the long game. That being said, it's not impossible to make an ensemble movie without any build-up. Marvel's done it themselves with Guardians of the Galaxy, and that works just fine. It's just that doing the legwork up front means that you don't have to dedicate screen time to it in your movie and explain who everyone is. Instead, you can focus on the dynamic between the characters rather than explaining who they are as people. But something like Infinity War with this many characters can't work without all the years of build-up. Next major reason it works so well is that it had an architect guiding the entire universe as it grows. Having Kevin Feige shepherding this universe has allowed for a consistent vision to be brought to life and planned far in advance. He just said that they're already planning stuff as far out as 2024, which I have mixed feelings about, but that's not the point here. Again, having a long-term plan is not necessary for a franchise, but it's worked phenomenally for Marvel. The third reason this is done so well is that they are able to make films that feel wildly distinct from each other and yet still feel like they're part of the same universe. This really started after Avengers, with Iron Man 3 sort of being a full-on Shane Black buddy movie, Winter Soldier being a 70s-style conspiracy thriller, and Guardians being a space adventure film, etc., etc. Despite their differences, though, it was never that much of a stretch to see how any of these characters could interact with each other. Right after Guardians of the Galaxy came out, people were already talking about how excited they were to see Rocket Raccoon and Tony Stark eventually meet and bounce like jokes off of each other. Now it's time to look at the ones that didn't work. And potentially more importantly, why? In the most basic sense, the others just failed to execute on what Marvel has been able to do for the last decade. In the case of Warner Bros. DC Universe, they were just unwilling to lay the groundwork. They decided they want to fast-track Justice League and change their initial plan for a Man of Steel sequel into Batman v Superman, which manufactured an incredibly rushed introduction to Batman. Wonder Woman ended up being really great, and it really should have been the tonal foundation for their team-up movie, but it was too late at that point. Justice League was well into production. They tried to do a course correct for Justice League to be more hopeful in tone, like the Wonder Woman movie, but it came off as very forced and jarring because that's not the original movie they were working towards. And because they didn't build the solid foundation beforehand, Justice League was being asked to accomplish too many things. It needed to set up who Aquaman was, who Cyborg was, who the Flash was, and tell a story in and of itself in under 2 hours thanks to Warner Brothers' studio mandate. Dumb move, Warner Brothers. And a lot of these problems also result from the way DC chose to handle their overall plan. Instead of having a Feige-type leading things, they had Zack Snyder be the man in charge up until the production issues on Justice League, where he was unceremoniously fired. Zack Snyder is a great visual director, and I really like a couple of his other projects, and I also have complete sympathy for him for the personal tragedies in his life that he's currently going through. He also just seems like a really nice and cool guy. All that aside, he just wasn't the right person to be shepherding this franchise. He started it off very questionably in Man of Steel, making an outrageously depressing and dour Superman movie, and that tone and aesthetic carried into Batman v Superman and into Justice League. When Justice League was in production, Wonder Woman became the smash hit that it is, and that kind of resulted in the Justice League becoming a Frankenstein's monster of what Snyder's original vision was. And then when they had Joss Whedon come in he injected his own dialogue and style into it, and it made this just disaster of a movie. Then you also have Suicide Squad, which is not Snyder's fault at all, maybe not even David Ayer's fault. Hey, Warner Brothers, maybe take a note here and don't have a trailer studio edit your entire movie for you. That's not what they do. Now let's briefly talk about the other major high-profile universe failure of the last couple of years. Universal's Dark Universe for all their monster characters. Okay, this thing was dead on arrival. Their inaugural film, The Mummy, committed the worst crime a movie can commit. It was boring. It was the Mummy's job to make us care about this universe, and it very much did not do that. Plus, you announced the stars of like 4 other movies years before production would start on any of those films you're talking about. That just made the failure of this way more embarrassing. Take your time a little bit, otherwise you're going to fall on your face. Essentially, what it comes down to with universe building is it takes a huge amount of patience, very methodical and subtle planning, and selecting the right people to spearhead your project. So far, Marvel is the only studio to actually do all 3. If you rush straight to where you think the money is, you won't get the money. Case in point, The Mummy. You have to take your time, otherwise the audience just won't care. And that's all I have to really say about that for right now. Thank you guys for watching. I wanted to let everybody know, in case you didn't, that as of this week, I actually have a website, dylanstormday.com. I'll link that down in the description. I have a written review of Avengers Infinity War there, and I'll be putting other content, including my videos and other artwork on that site. So go check it out if you want. Otherwise, thank you very much for watching. Again, like, share, subscribe if you enjoyed this, and I will see you guys next week. Have a good week, guys.